Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue the book Mysterious Monsters, Fact or Fiction. In this case, continuing with Chapter 1, Part 3, involving the title Mothman is a Paranormal Creature. Once again, it's going to feature some interesting insights and encounters that people have had with the infamous monsters. So I'm going to go ahead and do this part 3, and then I'll finish it and then give my own thoughts here as well. I'd love to hear as well what your own thoughts are. I've already seen some of the comments that people have placed with regards to the fact that whether it's paranormal or not. So please go ahead and post away below. This next segment is called Terrifying Red Eyes. And without further ado, let's go ahead and let's start that here. It says, Miss Connie Carpenter, a shy, studious girl of 18 from New Haven, West Virginia, had an identical encounter at 10:30 a.m. Sunday, November 27th. She was driving home from church when she saw what she thought at first was a large man in gray standing on the deserted links of the Mason County golf course outside of Mason, West Virginia, on Route 62. Those 10-foot wings suddenly unfolded, the thing took off straight up and then headed for her car. Those eyes, they were very red, and once they were fixed on me, I couldn't take my own eyes off of them, she declared. It's a wonder I didn't have a wreck. She said the creature flew directly at her windshield, then veered off and disappeared. Connie stepped on the gas and raced home in hysteria. She was so upset that she wasn't able to go to school for several days and required medical attention. She was the only Mothman witness to suffer from a common UFO ailment, Clive conjunctivitis, or eye burn. Her eyes were red, swollen, and itchy for 2 weeks afterward. Many witnesses to low-flying UFOs suffered the same thing, apparently caused by actinic ultraviolet rays. Miss Carpenter was also one of the few to claim a close look at the Mothman's face. It was horrible, like something out of a science fiction movie, she said. Shortly after the first Mothman stories hit the local papers, a wide variety of explanations were expressed by assorted experts. Dr. Robert Smith of the West Virginia University Biology Department declared that everyone was obviously seeing a rare sandhill crane, a bird whose long neck and long legs can give it a height of 6 feet, and it has red patches around the eyes. Yet no hunter in the area has reported seeing such a crane, and members of the Zoology Department of Ohio University pointed out that the crane inhabits the plains of Canada and has never been seen in the West Virginia, Ohio region. We carried photos of sandhill cranes and other birds, including the pterodactyl, with us during our investigations in West Virginia. That's not the thing we saw, Roger Scarberry scoffed when he saw the pictures. This thing could never chase us like it did. I just wish Dr. Smith could see this thing, Mary Millette added. All those who reported having seen Mothman sneered at the crane theory, but the skeptics, and they were in the majority, quickly accepted it and dismissed the mystery. 3 groups of witnesses contributed to the confusion by declaring that they were convinced that the bird was really some kind of giant ornithological oddity and not a monster from outer space, as some were beginning to imply. Next segment is called Weird Happenings. The McDaniel family, whose daughter Linda Scarberry was one of the original Mothman witnesses, had been living in a twilight zone ever since their daughter and others had first glimpsed Mothman. Linda had reportedly heard the sound of a speeded-up phonograph record around her own home after the incident, and peculiar manifestations indicating the presence of a poltergeist began. Finally, she and Roger moved into the basement apartment in the McDaniels' home. The poltergeist followed them. Strange lights appeared in the house, objects moved by themselves, and the heavy odor of cigar smoke was frequently noted. No one in the family smokes. The smell of cigar smoke is commonly reported in many poltergeist cases throughout the world. One morning, Linda woke up and distinctly saw the shadowy form of a large man in the room. The house was searched. All the doors were still locked. There was no sign of a prowler. Beginning in the fall of 1966, the TV sets and telephones in the region began to go wild as strange blobs of crystalline white light appeared in the night skies. Many of these lights moved at treetop level. There were also many daylight sightings of strange circular objects, particularly in the TNT area. By the end of 1967, over 1,000 UFO sightings by responsible witnesses had been recorded throughout the valley. Cars passing along the Camp Conley Road, south of the TNT area, stalled inexplicably. Television sets and radios, some brand new, burned out suddenly without cause. In March to April 1967, the UFO sightings hit an incredible peak, with the objects appearing nightly at low level over the TNT area as if they were following a regular flight schedule. Thousands of people invaded the section again to view this new wonder. Sheriff Johnson and most of his men were among the witnesses, but soberly refused to comment on the phenomenon. Mrs. Hyrie received a long line of very strange visitors after her UFO and Mothman stories began to appear in the press. Early in January 1967, she was working late in her office across from the county courthouse when a little man entered. He was about 4 feet 6 inches tall, she said later, and had very strange eyes covered with thick lensed glasses. His black hair was long and cut squarely, like a bowl haircut. Although it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside, he was wearing a short-sleeved blue shirt and blue trousers of thin material. He kept his right hand in his pocket at all times. Speaking in a low, halting voice, he asked her for directions to Welsh, West Virginia. She thought at first that he had some kind of speech impediment, and for some reason he terrified her. He kept getting closer and closer, she said, his funny eyes staring at me, almost hypnotically. Alarmed, she ran into the back room where the newspaper circulation manager was working on a telephone campaign. He joined her, and they spoke together to the little man. He seemed to know more about West Virginia than we did, she declared. At one point, the telephone rang, and while she was speaking on it, the little man picked up a ballpoint pen from her desk and looked at it in amazement, as if he had never seen a pen before. She gave him a pen and said he laughed in a loud, strange way as he took it. Then he ran out into the night and then disappeared around the corner. Being a good newspaper woman, Mrs. Hyrie later checked with the police to find out if there was any mentally deficient person on the loose who fitted the little man's description. There wasn't. Several weeks later, Mrs. Hyrie was crossing the street near her office when she again saw this very same man. He appeared startled when he noticed her watching him, turned abruptly, and ran for a large black car which suddenly rounded the corner. It was driven by a very large man. The little man sprang into it, and then it sped away. At 5:05 p.m. on the evening of December 15, 1967, the 700 span linking Point Pleasant with Ohio suddenly collapsed, laden with rush hour traffic, carrying 46 vehicles into the dark waters of the Ohio River. That night, the Lilly family on Camp Conley Road divided their attention between their TV set and the eerie lights that were racing at treetop level over the woods behind their home. They counted 12 UFOs together, more than they had ever seen on a single evening before. No UFOs were reported in Point Pleasant proper on that tragic night. And then the next segment is called What the Eyewitnesses Reported. In the majority of all the Mothman cases, the witnesses managed only a brief glimpse of the creature. Its most outstanding feature seemed to be its glowing red eyes. Self-luminous eyes usually suggest a paraphysical entity rather than a real animal. About half of the witnesses appeared to be people with latent or active psychic abilities, prone to having accurate premonitions, prophetic dreams, extrasensory perception, etc. Few witnesses were able to describe the bird's face, but most noted the eyes and were admittedly terrified by them. The eyes seem to have been more terrifying than the tremendous size of the creature. While some people claimed that Mothman was brown, most have described it as being grayish in color. All witnesses agreed that the wings did not flap in flight, making its incredible speeds all the more unaccountable. Those who saw it walk said that it shuffled or waddled almost penguin-like. Those who claimed to have seen it take off said it rose straight up like a helicopter. Considering its reported size, the 10-foot wingspread does not make sense. A normal-sized man would require wings 20 to 30 feet wide in order to glide and support his weight. Most large birds must make a running start to get airborne. The following composite description of West Virginia's Mothman has been compiled from more than 100 eyewitness accounts. Height, between 5 and 7 feet tall, usually described as taller than a good-sized man. Breadth, broad at the top with slight taper downwards, always described as very broad, much broader than a man. Covering, witnesses have been unable to determine if it is clothed or covered with skin, generally described as being gray, though some thought it was brown. One witness thought it was covered with gray fur. Daylight sightings of others do not substantiate this. Head. Seen from the back, it appears to have no head. Few witnesses reported seeing any face at all. Eyes. Self-luminous, bright red, approximately 2 to 3 inches in diameter, set wide apart. Witnesses say the eyes are set in near the top of the shoulders. Legs. Man-like. No witness has ever been able to describe the feet. Arms. None. No witnesses have ever reported seeing arms. Wings. Fold against the back when not in use. Wing spread, everyone agrees, is about 10 feet. Bat-like, but they do not flap in flight. Carriage. Animal walks erect like a man, does not stoop like a bear or ape, moves its legs in a shuffling manner. Some said that it waddled. Sound. Loud squeaks like a mouse. One witness said it sounded like a squeaky fan bell. Two witnesses testified they heard a mechanical humming sound as the creature flew overhead. Speed. It is said to have kept pace with automobiles moving 70 to 100 miles per hour. Few birds can achieve this in level flight. Pilot witnesses estimated it was traveling at least 7 miles per hour in level flight without flapping its wings. The anomalous bird hypothesis is strongly supported by the Ohio sightings. However, if the Mothman was the Ohio bird, then its behavior could have been different. It would not have been so elusive since the Ohio creatures did not seem to be particularly disturbed by the presence of the witnesses. Moreover, something that looked like nothing more than a giant bird would have been more apt to evoke curiosity instead of terror. It is also puzzling that no one else in Ohio or West Virginia even glimpsed such a bird, but it is possible that the grave diggers in Clendenin may have done so. Two unusual birds were caught in the area, however. In late December 1966, a rare Arctic snow owl was shot by a farmer in Gallipolis Ferry, West Virginia. This was 2 feet tall and had a 5-foot wingspan. Mothman witnesses converged on the farmer for a look at the owl, and all of them declared that it in no way resembled what they had seen. The winged Mothman never left behind any footprints, droppings, or other physical evidence. The only traces of any kind that were found were some giant dog tracks. Similar tracks have been found at other monster sites around the world. People in Point Pleasant continued to see monsters and UFOs throughout 1969, but Mrs. High published very few of their reports. One morning in April 1969, Mr. Ernest Atkins stepped from his home on a farm near New Haven, West Virginia, and found his 11-week-old beagle pup dead in his yard. There was no evidence that the dog died in a fight, Atkins said, but there was a large, very neat hole in its side, and the animal's heart was lying outside the body. It looked as if something chewed it out. There were no other marks on the body. No known animal would or could tear the heart out of a dog without leaving other marks on the carcass, and any animal that might attempt such a thing would certainly have eaten the heart or some part of the dog. We investigated the situation in Point Pleasant as thoroughly and as carefully as was humanly possible, but after all our interviews and all of our experiences, we were still left with the basic disturbing question: what is really on the loose in West Virginia? And then that's it. That pretty much ends that chapter associated with the Mothman. Pretty interesting stuff. Let's go ahead and let's talk about that here, along with the fact that it talks about the paranormal stance on the Mothman. So, yes, pretty fascinating stuff, right? There you had that situation with Miss Connie Carpenter first. She was another witness associated with the Mothman, and once again, she talked about its giant 10-foot wings and, of course, those infamous eyes that she described as being very red, and that it almost made her want to accidentally wreck her car. She was surprised that she didn't when it came to it. Interesting too, the fact that this was something like involving her own eyes were impacted. Apparently she was suffering from eye burn, how her eyes were red and swollen afterward, and this is commonly linked to UFOs as well. I never really heard about that, so that's pretty interesting on that part too. And then there was the part associated with photographs of pterodactyls and other large birds being shared, and including a rare sandhill crane as an explanation, but everyone dismissed that immediately, rightfully so. The Mothman does not look like anything along those lines. And then finally, we had that situation with the McDaniel family, how they in turn, after experiencing the Mothman, in other words, Linda Scarberry had experienced him, they in turn had poltergeist activity. So this may be the link associated with the Mothman being paranormal. First, there was the shadowy figure, the very large, manly shadowy figure that was there within the household, even though everything was locked and there was no prowler found. Then there was the smell of cigar smoke, which is apparently tied to poltergeist activity. Then, of course, there was strange lights, objects being moved, and then other type of apparitions and sounds, including the sound of a speeded up phonograph record. All of this, again, ties to the Mothman apparently being paranormal. Let me know what you guys think about that. Do you really think that it's tied to a ghostly aspect when it comes to the Mothman? If it does, that's interesting because it's two angles, or three. One is it's tied to cryptids, then ghosts, and then finally UFOs. So pretty much it's like almost a home run, pretty much all right there. And then finally there was the description associated with the Mothman, from the height to the breath to the legs to the sound and so on. It's a very descriptive part showcasing everything that was making up the Mothman themselves. But let me know what you guys think. Great chapter. In fact, let me give you a tease of what the next chapter is going to be. Another fan favorite, something that I just covered, the chupacabras. So definitely it's going to be good for all you fans out there. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.